again is the legendary sound of the Preservation Hall Jazz Band from their latest album, So It Is. The song is titled 100 Fires, and it is definitely fire as far as I'm concerned, and hopefully that gave you all a little shuffle to help move your day forward in a way that is positive and productive. This is Stephanie Renee welcoming you back to today's TGIF edition of The Mojo, and it is the Reelblack Radio Hour. Mike Dennis is in the house. How are you, sir?
I'm good. That sounded good. It reminded me of Duke Ellington stuff.
Yeah.
From back in the 20s.
Yep.
They brought that trumpet thing that we all do so well.
That we all do so well.
Us colored folks. You know. No, yeah, I don't know.
He was speaking in the collective black.
Well, no.
So we just got to clarify what that means.
I mean, historically, I forget the name of the band, but when the Army band went during World War I, went to Paris, and they were doing all that stuff, it blew everybody's minds. They thought everybody came from another planet.
Exactly, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to play it. It came on shuffle. I listen to my music on shuffle when I'm in the car most of the time, and that came on while I was on my way in this morning. And that speaking through the trombone, first of all, I love the trombone almost above any other instrument. Okay. There are a few that I like more, but the trombone is high on my list. And that whole wah-wah that he did with that, I mean, and that's why they call it the talking horn. It was just so phenomenal. And I've had a chance to see them in New Orleans and elsewhere. And Preservation Hall is top notch. So
when we're connected, we continue to surprise and amaze people and folks. How did they do it? It must be the shoes,
and all of those things, yes. But we're innovative people. We can't help it.
We're definitely in deep secrecy. Yeah, I heard you talking about the cyber attack on the Equifax or whatever. So I'm not really worried about that because I don't think anybody wants to steal my identity when it comes to credit ratings. But it made me think, like they're always like trying to accuse different people of hacking into stuff. Like they accuse the Koreans of hacking into Sony. Yeah. And then they just hacked into HBO and put the Game of Thrones up. And they the Russians hacked into the election. I don't think there are any black people hacking into anything.
I disagree. Okay. However, I think that we would have different objectives in our hacking circumstances. But I think there are a number of folks that are looking to expunge records and do some other things that are more meaningful to our immediate community.
Yeah, well, there's been no announcement of hacking into the FBI and correcting people.
Because folks that are trying to get people out of jail or out of trouble are not trying to necessarily go to jail themselves. We don't have the layers of protection that other groups do when they go about this whole cyber hacking mission.
Perhaps. I'm going to look into the camera on Facebook Live. I'll do like Trump did. Like hackers, if you're watching, please like hack into the cable company and reduce my bill, or hack into the gas company so I can afford to get my gas on this summer.
He does not aim high enough. Hackers, if you would like to target me, please eliminate all of my debt. That's what I would like.
Student loans, all this stuff?
Eliminate all debt, because that would be the first thing I would do if I won any of these major lotteries, is to eliminate all debt. And then you go about investing in the other things that are important to you. So you could save me a step, because the likelihood of me winning Powerball or Mega Millions is very, very, very slim. And so if you could just go ahead and eliminate my debt now, that would automatically boost my credit score to the highest possible level. And then I'd have the resources to do whatever else I could do.
Just hackers lower the price of gas. It went up 50 cents since that hurricane.
That hacking will not help that.
They can that's big. Flick a switch anywhere.
That's big oil.
Big oil.
Big oil is using Harvey as an excuse to reduce production and raise costs.
Oh, so they're all in cahoots.
Average gas price across the nation has raised almost 50 cents in the last 3 weeks.
Okay.
Because of that.
Because it hit Texas. But you're saying there's plenty of... It shouldn't affect it immediately like that. It's a supply and demand
technically, it
thing.
shouldn't have affected it at all. We're only talking about a 20% reduction in production. We're not talking about that nobody is drilling for oil or refining oil. 20%. Okay, so 1/5. So if we had a 20-cent raise, you know what I mean? But not 50 cents.
So they're just making up prices.
Yes. Yes, they are, because they can.
Okay.
That's how this works, unfortunately. And that's why we need definitely
reparations.
We need a whole different approach to how folks make money and quote unquote pass along costs.
Well, actually, that brings up a good point. I was going to save that for the second half, but tonight, we're showing this movie Sit-In at the Bank Building, and I thought it was really important. I'd never heard of it. And I got in touch with a gentleman by the name of Robert M. Young. He's 92 years old.
Wow.
His and just social activist, very humanistic filmmaker.
Okay.
He's done a lot of films with Edward James Olmos. He directed Ballad of Gregorio Cortez and Caught, and he did a movie. One of my favorite films of all times is Nothing But a Man. He was the producer and cinematographer of that.
Okay.
And a friend of mine that I met recently, Jake Perlin, who programs the Metrograph in New York, put me in touch with Mr. Young, and we've been having conversations. And I said, well, I'm really curious about how Nothing But a Man came to be. I mean, for those who don't remember or don't know it, it's Abby Lincoln and Ivan Dixon. It's one of the original love stories
that I never saw until you mentioned it and you screened it. And I came out and checked it out, and now I fully love that film. Yeah,
it's one of the most fully developed romances that you'll see with the black folks in it. It's done in 1964, and it's an amazing film. So I was talking to him. It's like, well, my interest in making this film came as Nothing But a Man came as a result of doing a documentary about the sit-in protests in 1960 for NBC. So I was like, really? So I went all over the place, Google, YouTube, all that stuff, and nobody had it. So, but he has a personal copy. He's letting us show tonight.
That's great.
And it blew my mind. It's the very first film appearance by John Lewis, Representative John Lewis, because he was part of the whole Fisk University's Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. So he opens the film, and then but what's interesting, because of Mr. Young, he's got access. It's not just a one-sided or like, Voice of God kind of documentary. He literally goes within all the different factions of the communities of Nashville and talks to people about how do they feel about this protest, how they feel about this injustice of blacks being refused service at lunch counters, right? So, so it breaks it down in a very interesting way. It's also beautifully photographed. And the one thing that really touched me about this film is, a lot of times you see movies about civil rights or the civil rights time, and you see our pain, you see the dogs. There's a whole sequence where these are young kids. These are like college kids, like 19, 20, 21. And he sets them up in the gymnasium at the school and just talks about what it was like for them to be arrested and how they came together and they sang and they had jokes and they kind of used that experience to make themselves stronger. And that's something that I very rarely see. Even when you're talking about movies like The Butler or Selma, they show you like the conflict, but they don't show like the fact that our resilience comes through humor. It comes through song, and that's something that I think is very unique to this film. So I'm excited to show it. But then, there was a little bit of a backlash on Instagram. I'm not calling out the brother, but he was he's like, he's very segregationist. It's like, well, no, you have to put yourself in the place of being a young person in 1960. And this was actually something that affected change. And I think this is a movie that everybody should have the opportunity to see. It shouldn't just be in like a vault someplace.
Right.
So that people really see in terms of a blueprint, what works and what doesn't.
Well, one of the things I think is interesting, though, as I was listening to your statement, is I do think that Ava purposely, there were the moments in Selma where she showed Dr. King and Abernathy.
Yeah, hanging out. Just in the rooms,
But no, even in the jail cell, it's trying to keep one another encouraged. And sometimes, you think of the phrase, you got to laugh to keep from crying. I think that was very true for a lot of people. And I think that, she captured a moment like that between the two of them in the film really beautifully. that it's like when you feel despondent, your friend, your dog, your ride or die who's with you, just reminds you of a meal or a moment, and you can start reminiscing, or you talk about those things, and it breaks you out of the despair that you feel because of the reality that you're in those moments. I think we do that naturally.
That's absolutely, but I don't, and I stand corrected on Selma, and shout out to Ava being on the cover of Time magazine next week.
Woo-hoo!
Make sure you pick up your copy, pick up several copies.
Talking about firsts, women firsts.
Yeah, so that's major. But yeah, the resilience, like what makes us a resilient people, how we continue to survive within this culture, within this country is a lot of it is being the ability to laugh, and being able to laugh at your belly's like laugh and keep from crying, as Smokey Robinson would say. So I think this movie definitely shines a light on it, and it's a real documentary. And then consequently, used to use that word, woke up this morning and one of my favorite channels on YouTube, Hezekiah News, they posted up a 2-hour rally footage from 1966.
Okay.
It was basically uncut news footage at Toluga College in Mississippi. It was the night before. Tougaloo, thank you. Tougaloo. I'm doing this off the top of my head, folks.
It's all right.
But it's 2 hours, and it's a rally, basically uncut the night before a big march. And it's the MC is Dick Gregory.
Okay.
Right, so he's carrying the whole night through, like in between every speech or artist, he's telling jokes.
Yeah.
First up, James Brown doing 2 songs. Live with the Famous Flames. Nice. Right. Then it goes to Stokely Carmichael, and he speaks, and Sammy Davis does 2 songs, and then James Meredith. I think it's not. I don't think James Meredith is there. A whole bunch of people. So I would say look for that on YouTube. It's just amazing. I think it's very important that we see these kind of images just to see again what works and what doesn't, because I feel like there are a lot of people that want to move in the same direction, but I don't think a hashtag is enough.
No, well, I mean, true. A hashtag is not enough, but the purposefulness, I think sometimes as we try and travel in these activist spaces and we want to see movement happen, we sometimes take ourselves a little too seriously. That one of the things that I remain encouraged by, and I've shared this on the air before, is that when we got a chance to go down with Urban League Philadelphia for the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, at the Grand Hyatt, where all the various Urban League chapters were gathering in order to go over to the National Mall, there was not. It wasn't like a church processional and a lot of kumbaya and we shall overcome. They had a DJ in the grand ballroom at the Grand Hyatt playing soul music. So, and it wasn't just from one era. So it was James Brown, and it was funkadelic, and it was clean rap from contemporary times. But the thing was that you had all these people who were there to stand and bear witness to this very important commemoration, this moment in history. And at the same time, while people were putting their signs together, while folks were looking for their friends and loved ones, folks was sliding through the grand ballroom to James Brown. That was it was wonderful just to be in the midst of, because that is the energy that you want people to take out with them when they're walking down the street and they're chanting and everything else, that there's serious business to be done. But at the same time, if you don't remember the smile and the love for the community that's compelling you to say, I'm standing up for these issues, then what's the point? And I just think that a lot of these rallies, people get so angry. They're so overwhelmed with the vastness of what needs to be done to bring about social justice reform and criminal justice reform and everything else, that they get mired in the problem rather than kind of claiming the victory even before you see it.
Right. And I think that that's a problem that I'm seeing within the art. Like I don't necessarily have access to everybody, but I can kind of get a tap into how people are feeling just by looking at what art is popular. And, when we're talking about film, a lot of it's just regurgitating victimization.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm just waiting, and I can't wait for Black Panther. I can't wait for A Wrinkle in Time, because I just feel like we need to project further into our imagination in order to really pull ourselves out of some of this miasma that we're in. But, in the 60s, I mean, if you look at this 2-hour clip, it's like the music was the fuel. The artists, they stood up and became a part of the movement. So in 66, he's performing, and this is like 2 years before Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, so... But he's there alongside Stokely and Dick Gregory and everybody ready to march. So I think there's threads there, and there have been documentaries. I think Voice of a Revolution and clearly the Mavis Staples documentary spends a lot of time talking about how important Staples singers' music and gospel music was towards the movement, because people weren't just sitting eating sandwiches on the side of the road. They needed music to fuel them.
Yes.
And even in this movie we're showing tonight at 7:15 p.m. at the Bank Building, 38th and Lancaster. And Mr. Young is going to actually Skype in afterwards and talk to us, do an interview, answer anybody's questions about the making of the film. He's a very engaging gentleman. And he's got years of stories, so it's going to be a very, very honored to be able to show
92, I imagine so.
Well, he did National Geographic specials. He's traveled within all kinds of cultures and documented them. He's just, I wish there were 50 more filmmakers like him, but the work that he's made stands the test of time, is extremely unique, and there's a level of perfection to all of it, I think. But yeah, so what are I'm just waiting for the musicians to really step up. I mean, I know Common did Black America Again and all this kind of stuff, but where's our anthem? What is the thing that people are really going to be singing?
But see, so we'll give you this question as we go to break, because I think some of you in the listening audience might have some thoughts about this. Are we at a point? We say all the time tactics have to change, that because society has changed. I don't know that we're an anthem folk anymore, that there are so many different flavors of who we are, what we do, and how we approach these things, that I don't know if there is a We Shall Overcome for 2018. You know what I mean? I don't know. Because
we're not in that same kind of unified collective space. Everybody feels like they have the right to their own separate opinion.
And I don't know that we always have been. I think we get sold it that way. I don't think that there are a whole bunch of people, and maybe it's because, in conversation with folks our age, right, who think of those songs like funeral dirges. Like, it has never motivated and moved them necessarily. Even in looking back at the clips and thinking about how you think about the movement, I love, and please don't be offended. There's somebody in the listening audience who's going to be offended when I say this. I have friends who do not listen to Sweet Honey in the Rock because they're like, God have mercy. Are all of those, they're like, it is like kind of like revived slave chants. They're like, it is so dark and slow, and they can't get into it at all. Right. And now I love Sweet Honey in the Rock for a number of different reasons, but I understand where some of the conversation comes from around some of these songs that other people consider to be anthems and motivating and all of that. Right. So we got to take a break. Yeah. We're tossing this at you, ladies and gentlemen. Do you think we need a new rallying cry, a song, a chant,
Fight
something,
the Power 2017.
2017 and beyond, in order to begin rallying us, motivating us, that we can use as we gather, as we fight for what we know to be ours, that needs to be ours in society. 215-634-8065, toll free at 1-866-361-0900. On Twitter, you can tweet Mike at Reelblack, ReelBlack, and you can tweet me at WURD_S Renee. And we'll continue this week's edition of Reelblack Radio, part of the Mojo, here on Word Radio after this.
Breakfast can wait.
From the album Art, Official Age, that is Prince with a tune called Breakfast Can Wait. And, I always like to conjure up a little Prince energy, but I also wanted to toss this into the fray as we're talking about redoing symbols and signs. Here on today's edition of Reelblack Radio, we were talking about if there is an anthem, if there is some level of a kind of unifying force that you think we need as a society right now to rally behind as we march, as we gather in spaces to talk about the what next of our society. If we need something like a We Shall Overcome, quite literally, for a modern age in order to get us into that space. And I just love the fact that people are getting very new, if you will, with the way that they are talking about motivating symbols and signs and the change that's coming over our nation. So I pulled out that Prince song because Minnesota, this is taken directly from a headline from Blavity.com, which says Minnesotans want to replace Christopher Columbus statue with one of Prince. I love this. It's a quick article, so I'm just going to run through it real quick. It says, since Charlottesville, citizens have been protesting for the removal of racist and historically insensitive images such as Confederate monuments and the Confederate flag. Cities are also beginning to reconsider whether Christopher Columbus is a figure that ought to be celebrated. In fact, Los Angeles recently replaced Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day. We told you about that here on the Mojo. Now, Minnesota is poised to remove both a controversial statue and thumb its nose at the Italian imperialist. A petition titled Replace Columbus Statue with a Prince Statue, and one chosen by the Native community, has been submitted to Governor Dayton and the state legislature of Minnesota. According to the International Business Times, nearly 3,000 people have signed the petition, and I pulled this article, I think, on Tuesday. So it's been, okay. I'm sure it has more signatures by now. But it says, which aims to replace a statue of Columbus that stands in the state capitol with one that depicts the purple one, and one that honors the state's indigenous people. A similar petition to replace a Confederate statue in Virginia with one of Missy Elliott has also gained a lot of traction. So I'll leave it there. But I think
y'all
that's hilarious.
Need to stop.
Why?
Okay, all right. Okay, so all right, let's stay positive. All right, so which version of Prince? Is it the Prince butt naked on the horse Prince, or is it Prince, big Afro Prince?
He can't help himself.
Is it the dearly beloved? Like
he has to add another level Prince, of art. What difference would it make?
I'm just saying, like, we need who's going to be on the committee to pick which Prince image?
Well, first of all, that's not even the important part. So this goes to the conversation that I've been having continually with our listening audience, which is that I'm in support of removing these Confederate statues and monuments because they never should have been erected in the first place. Mm-hmm. That is not a deal that our government under President Lincoln should have made with the lost Confederacy about, well, okay, in order for you to fully rejoin the United States of America, we'll give you the opportunity to erect statues to your heroes as you come back. Mm-hmm. Boo, they lost. No. They never should have been there in the first place. And the idea that states are saying we have enough people to honor that have been impactful in one way or another. And Prince, of course, was hugely impactful. So the idea that Minnesotans want to take that, and there's no excuse for a Confederate monument to be in Minnesota. Think about this, what I'm saying. That it shouldn't have been in Minnesota at all.
It's a done deal. Take down those racist statues, put Prince up. I just want to be on the committee. Like, I want to talk to the sculptor. I think the high heels need to be about 2 more inches taller,
I'm just saying, I think it's a rallying point, and there are plenty of people of all backgrounds that love Prince.
I just need my cable,
and love his music,
reduced. That's all. Hackers.
Stop appealing to the hackers. We moved on beyond that conversation. But I'm just saying that I like the idea of things being very localized, if you will. Mm-hmm. If we're going to have an argument about states' rights and everything else, then the people of Minnesota determining that they would like to have a statue of Prince rather rather than a Confederate quote unquote hero, I think is fine. And it's even funnier when we talk about Virginia, which is the drawing line of where we think about the North and the Confederacy, for them to say Missy Elliott. I just think that's hilarious.
Well,
I don't think it'll ever happen. I just think it's funny.
Yeah, but then, sometimes, you say like the Bee Gees, I started a joke. It's sort of like, well, when do we get past the joke? Like everybody thought it was funny when Trump ran, and now we got to deal with all that. So at what point does it stop?
But this is about honoring people that are legitimately from someplace. I don't remember where Trump was born.
Okay, but you're replacing a racist white person with a black image that's more positive. Is that the idea?
And it wouldn't necessarily have to be black. With somebody who's from the state. Virginia is saying Missy because Missy's from the Tidewater area. Minnesota is saying Prince because Prince was from Minneapolis.
So in Ogden, Utah, they need to put some Osmond statues up. Is that what you're saying?
If they wanted to.
Okay. All right.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily argue it. I'm just saying that makes a whole lot more sense than a Confederate hero.
I'm open to it. Shirley is saying hi on Facebook. Hey, Shirley. I'm open to it, but I think, I guess my biggest problem with this whole social media, everybody has a voice thing, is that when you're talking about consensus, the consensus leans towards the stupidity sometimes. Like, I love Prince, but at what point, then what do we honor next in replacing this?
All I'm saying is that if the Confederate statues and monuments are coming down, then if you're going to use the pedestal to put something else up, then being self-determinant within a certain geographic area and with the will of the people, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, because the Confederate statues and monuments never should have been there. Okay. So replacing them with things that are more localized, that have more sentimental value to the people who live there, I think is perfectly fine.
I'm not disagreeing.
And I'm not saying that other people couldn't be honored.
I just think, when I'm not sure, like when I see statues tumbling, I think about, fascism and, Russia and all that kind of stuff, tumbling Trotsky.
That's not even your point of you're not old enough to have that as a particular point of reference.
I just think, when you take that down and then you're sort of erasing the past, you're not really addressing it in the right way. So I say put Prince right next to Robert E. Lee and let people decide.
But why let
take Frank Rizzo?
Why would
and put Will Smith next to Frank Rizzo? I'm
just asking you, why is it okay that a Robert E. Lee statue be in Minnesota in the first freaking place? That's what annoys me. That's what incenses me about this whole conversation. That so seldom do we ask why that other crap is there. It never should have been there.
It shouldn't have been there. When you take it down, it serves as an affront to somebody else. It fuels their fire. So I say put them both next together. Let people. I mean, I think the biggest problem is that we're denied our history. We don't know enough because it's been obscured. So bring that out, but also make people aware of why it was obscured in the first place.
I mean, I get that, but I'm just saying that the conversation about erasure when it comes to Confederate folks is BS. Because they weren't heroes. They were losers of a war. This is not typical practice. This is uniquely stupidly American that we allow for the erection of monuments and statues for people who lost, for people who were on the wrong side of history and philosophy, and all this. They shouldn't be there. So this is not erasure. This is taking down something that never should have been there in the first freaking place. That's what it drives me crazy about this conversation. And so, I mean, I hear you, but why should anything to Robert E. Lee stand? Nothing. Shout out to his great grandson.
All right, I'm gonna let you win.
But for people who did not see this story, I posted it to my personal Facebook page. Robert E. Lee's great grandson is a minister. And was asked to leave his church where he was pastoring because he called racism America's original sin. And in the wake of Charlottesville was talking about how his great-grandfather's legacy is not one that should be remembered or revered. He never wanted to be on all these statues in the first place. He had already spoken out very publicly about the fact that he thinks these symbols are inconsequential. And because of all of that, very unpopular with his parishioners. And so he got kicked out of his own church. And so, people were saying that there's a black church that will welcome him in, in these very trying times, that as a minister who has not chosen to step away from this so-called heritage and legacy, that he's not going to be very welcomed among his own. And so it'll be interesting to see where he lands at this point. But he's also Reverend Robert E. Lee. So he's just the fourth. Okay. Well, so it's really interesting.
I'll defer to you on that. Yes, all racism should be eradicated, and all symbols and signs of it should be eliminated.
There are plenty of racists. I'm speaking specifically about Confederate war.
And the flags need to come down. And all
of that crap. They lost. Put it away. Talk about it in context, and make sure that when we speak about the history that we speak about it in a balanced way, because right now we don't. It's like you would never think there were any white Southerners who were anti-slavery, or that there was even a debate that went on around this. My white Southern ancestry weren't rich enough to own slaves. They weren't a part of the system. That didn't mean they didn't benefit from it, but we talk about it all wrong, and having statues and monuments only exacerbates the wrong conversation. That's all I'm saying. It's a little bit of a personal standpoint.
To quote Chris Rock, I just don't want any white people in the room deciding whether to cancel Soul Train. So.
Well, let's talk to Jeffrey, who called in from Germantown, before we take our next break. Hi, Jeffrey.
Hey, Jeffrey.
Hello, this is not Jeffrey, it's Guthrie.
Hey, Dr. Ramsey, how are you?
Hey, Dr. Ramsey.
I'm great. I love this conversation.
Well, you're the musicologist, so this is perfect timing.
Right. I have to say I'm intrigued by this local idea. This like local municipalities really thinking about what they're going to erect. For instance, I was thinking about in Philadelphia, who invented the Philly cheesesteak? I think they deserve a statue. Let's just rally around these things that everybody can get with.
Yes.
Well, it was Pat actually.
But I was going to say, but what's interesting is that the Mural Arts project is actually, they have a new kind of convening idea that's happening in local parks called Monument Lab, and that's precisely what they're asking people to speak into. What deserves a monument, and what would you like to see in these parks or in some of these other public spaces? So you have an opportunity to go visit one of these sites and actually tell that story and have it captured for the record.
Interesting. I'd love to weigh in on the Philly cheesesteak debate.
Yeah, see, but I would leave Rizzo's statue up and just make sure there was a fresh cheesesteak plastered on his face every morning, and that would be my solution. I think it's not an either or. It's like there's all kinds of things in the rainbow, but this is just something we'll continue to debate.
I would say, well, Mike is the only native Philadelphian among us, Doc. So we would have to defer a little bit to his thoughts about how that would play out here in Philly, and those of us who are now permanent residents, would have a different perspective on what we might want to see honored.
I love you guys. The sibling relationship on the air really works with me. It's I listen to a conversation between me and my sisters.
we could just start like a little underground movement just to change the names of streets. Like just like stand on corners. Like where's 3rd Street? Oh, you mean Malcolm X Boulevard?
Yeah.
You need to make a right. People just stand in front of the streets.
Oh my God, that's a whole nother conversation, Doc. That is a highly contested. It was like there are some people who would prefer to let Rizzo stand on the Municipal Services Building steps and completely remove Rocky from public knowledge.
Oh, heresy.
Where's Columbus Boulevard? Oh, you mean Wesley Snipes Drive?
Yeah.
I like that effort. See, Mike and I can come back together on that one for sure. But we appreciate you calling in, Doc. Thanks for listening.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
You too. And we're going to take our final commercial break of this week's edition.
I got it.
But we would love to hear from others of you who are joining us. And yeah, Mike and I do fight like brother and sister on the air. We admit it. Yeah. But this, I think, is a conversation that deserves more consideration. Who determines who gets honored with these statues and monuments, and what would you like to see in places where you are? This goes beyond Philadelphia. We know we have plenty of people listening and viewing from outside of this greater Philadelphia area. So let's think about who you would like to see a statue of, how it works, and I'll try and look up the information about the Monument Lab project from Mural Arts, because you really can tell your stories and your ideas as a part of this information gathering that they're doing this summer into fall. And that and more as we conclude this week's edition of Reelblack Radio in a moment. From his self-titled debut solo album, that is one of my favorite singer-songwriters on the planet, David Ryan Harris, with a tune titled Nothing More to Say. He is so gifted. If you ever get a chance to check him out these days when he visits Philly, he goes to venues like Tin Angel on 2nd Street and does acoustic sets. He is so amazing. I cannot praise him enough. He's got a great voice. He's incredible on the guitar, and he can do the rhythmic thing while he's playing, very heavily blues influenced. Just a great show. Trust me when I tell you, Facebook Live, and those of you who are listening at home, check him out.
Yeah, random information. Tin Angel's on hiatus right now. They're looking for a new space.
Really?
Yeah, they've been closed since the beginning of the year, I think.
Okay.
But the great venue, shot lots of Alice Smith there.
Yes.
And all kinds of great shows. Gil Scott-Heron, his last shows were at Tin Angel. So I can't wait for them to come back with that.
Yes.
But, well, there's a lot of not that much out this week. This is like the first week of school and kind of a slow week.
Yeah, it's so rare when I actually get to a movie theater these days that it's like,
I suggest people stay in if they haven't seen the stuff that we've been talking about already.
Yes.
That's still playing.
Did I tell you I called him Morgan?
Oh, on Netflix. Awesome
last
film.
weekend.
Yeah.
See, that's
powerful film. I Called Him Morgan.
Yes, about Philadelphia's own Lee Morgan. Just appreciating the genius that has been birthed by this city, and some of the great tragedy also that a lot of these artists have gone through, trying to really establish themselves and be on their path. A lot, during the jazz era, drugs claimed the lives of a lot of people, and then the kind of subsequent or surrounding culture, also took a lot of people out of here way too soon.
Yeah, Netflix is doing a big. There's nothing. I was scanning this morning. There's nothing new per se this week on Netflix that would be, interesting. Of interest for us. But next week there's a really special film, Strong Island, which was at Sundance, and we're going to talk more about that next week. And then they also released the trailer for Mudbound, which is Dee Reese's new movie,
which has been getting nothing but rave reviews from the people that are seeing it at Toronto International Film Festival. That's where it debuted this week, and so a lot of people have been tweeting about it.
Yeah, I had a chance to see it at Sundance. It's a very powerful film, and I'm glad it's on Netflix because I think it would be it's definitely going to cause some discussion and controversies based on a novel. Like I said, it's not going to make black folks the happiest, but it's beautifully filmed. I mean, because any movie with black people that's set in the 40s, there's going to be some stuff in it that's going to bother you,
right?
But very, very powerful movie and we'll talk more about it. Hopefully we can get Mrs. Reese on, that deals with sort of the post-war, pre-civil rights time period in a small town in Tennessee.
Which we very rarely talk about. As a community, we have these big historic moments that happen, but the in-betweens of these things, I think, are very relevant. Yeah,
so it's sort of like people that when they want to move forward, but they're mudbound. They're really stuck within their fate. This is pre-civil rights, pre-women's lib, and it's all these dynamic characters, really well done. But opening this week, connected to Philadelphia, is True to the Game. And so it was all over the place, like 10 7 theaters in Philadelphia. It's directed by Preston Whitmore. It's based on Terry Wood's novel from 1998. It's one of the first street novels. She became a multimillionaire selling books out of the trunk of her car.
Hey, and listen, that model worked for a lot of people.
True to the Game was one of the first ones. Her first book, and it's been turned into this movie, and Columbus Short is in it. Vivica Fox.
And Kayla J wasn't looking up at me when you said that, because we have these ongoing conversations about Columbus Short and why brother.
Well,
but
I hope it's a hit.
But ladies and gentlemen,
it looks like it's gonna be slamming.
Awful. Stop it.
But the gentleman, I can't think of his name right now, who recently passed the alcoholism. He was on True Blood.
That's not why he died, is it? Nelson Ellis?
Nelson Ellis is one of his last films as well.
Well, I saw another one of his last films on Netflix last weekend, Little Boxes.
Oh, yeah.
Which was adorable.
Okay.
I appreciated that. I know we're almost out of time. Okay. I want to get this into, since I mentioned Toronto International Film Festival. And I did try to reach out so that we could get the filmmaker on. Didn't get a confirmation for today's show. Mm-hmm. But there is a new documentary called Sighted Eyes, Feeling Heart, that talks about Lorraine Hansberry, of course, the legendary playwright of A Raisin in the Sun, and it features narration by LaTanya Richardson Jackson, Samuel Jackson's wife, and Anika Noni Rose actually does the voice of Lorraine Hansberry for some of these shows. So I would really love to talk to the filmmaker about, pulling these clips together and everything. And, Lorraine Hansberry is one of those unsung heroes of the civil rights movement, because in many of those, private conversations that Harry Belafonte gathered in his apartment with Sidney Poitier and other people, Lorraine Hansberry was one of those very strong, militant voices that worked behind the scenes of this. So contributing a lot of money, demanding respect from a lot of these elected officials and what have you. And it's just a story that we don't hear nearly enough about. We, attribute her to that one historic play and very little else about her very short life, unfortunately. And so I'm very curious to see this film, which is supposed to premiere today, and get more information about where it's going to be seen and everything else. But for those of you who are also Hansberry fans and want to learn more about her life, again, it's called Sighted Eyes, Feeling Heart, directed by Tracy Heather Strain, and it opens today in limited markets, so look for it.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about it. Michelle Mater has been connected to that film for over the whole genesis of the piece. She says it's amazing. Now, also opening at all the AMC theaters today, at the AMC Cherry Hill and the Neshaminy and the Franklin Mills. Now, another reason to stay home, unless you need air conditioning, 9/11. So this is a movie. We've seen this before, where a whole bunch of people are like stuck in an elevator, and they've got all these different stories and stuff. So this is on September 11th. You've got Charlie Sheen, Luis Guzman, Wood Harris.
You immediately lost me.
And Whoopi Goldberg is the woman who works at the World Trade Center, who's communicating with them. I'll help get you out of the elevator. I'll help get you out. I think Jacqueline Bisset is the other person in it.
Wow.
So oh no, I'm sorry, Gina Gershon. I'm sorry, because she's got the scar. Sorry, Jacqueline. I didn't mean to put you in that fiasco. But yeah, so another reason not to spend $15 and stay home, but that's in theaters today. I looked at the trailer. It just screams wait for whatever format
it does.
And then I know we're out of time, but go to the Scribe Video Center website. They've got some amazing stuff coming up this coming week. The Tapscott documentary, Horace Tapscott documentary, screening on Tuesday, and then Barbara McCullough, who's the director. She's one of the beacons of the West Coast LA Rebellion, UCLA Rebellion movement. She's the director. She's going to do a masterclass on Wednesday.
Nice.
And then on Thursday, they're going to kick off a tribute to unseen Nigerian films, a whole body of work by this Nigerian filmmaker. I cannot pronounce his name. I'm not going to try.
And he's not showing it to me either, ladies and gentlemen. I can help him out.
They're doing a whole retrospect. Oh, because you have the Nigerian.
I'm just saying, I have a penchant for languages.
Okay, yeah. All right. Anyway, so go check out the Scribe website, and then also hopefully I'll see you tonight, and we can find some anthems to play.
Indeed.
At the sit-in movie.
And in response to Dr. Ramsey's call, I want to just let folks know that Monument Lab, I mentioned, is a public art and history project produced with Mural Arts Philadelphia between September 16th and November 19th. Monument Lab invites Philadelphians and visitors to join a citywide conversation about history, memory, and our collective future. So if you go to monumentlab.muralarts.org, you can read more about the project itself and where they're going to set up these temporary booths where you can go inside and you can look at some of these public spaces and think about what monuments, what statues, what other kinds of commemorations you think should take place in these spaces all throughout the city of Philadelphia. And you can make it as personal or as general as you like, but they just want to hear from us about what our public spaces should feel and look like to be representative of the people that use the spaces.
Okay, and the person's name there, Mustafa.
Yeah, Mustafa Alassane.
Okay, all right. If it's that easy. Mustafa Alassane. They're doing a whole retrospective at the Lightbox Film Center throughout the rest of the month, and then we'll talk again. But,
yes, yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. We're going to say goodbye to those of you on Facebook Live and to those of you who are at home, because I've got to step into a meeting. And so in our noon hour for today's Mojo, we are going to give you some replays of some of our best conversations of recent history. But we want to remind you that today's Mojo has been brought to you by Philly Powered, which is a part of the Get Healthy Philly, the Division of Chronic Disease Prevention for the Philadelphia Department of Public Health, and is designed to promote everyday physical activity among adult men and women who are seeking to live healthier lives. Visit phillypowered.org, and don't forget that I will be coming at you at 11 a.m. tomorrow. We're broadcasting live from the annex of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, where they're going to have their opening ceremonies for the PHL Assembled exhibit. Lots of live performances, lots of storytelling, lots of beautiful visual art. We're only going to be there for the early part of it, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., but we'll be broadcasting live, so stop by the table and say hello. It'll be going through 8 p.m. that evening, and our friend Thomas is going to be at
the African American
Museum.
Now, the art museum, that's on the Benjamin Franklin Parkway?
No, the annex.
The annex, okay.
On Pennsylvania Avenue.
Pennsylvania Avenue, a.k.a. Rodney Allen Rippey Boulevard. So make sure you're there at 11 a.m.
Shout out to my former Ebony Jr. subscription in order to know who Rodney Allen Rippey was, because he was in every
I'm saying we need to take control, rename these streets. Stop worrying about these statues.
We got to pay some bills, ladies and gentlemen. Say bye to Mike. We're waving bye to Facebook Live. Kayla J is going to guide you through the next hour of some of our best conversations on the Mojo of recent history. And again, we look forward to greeting you tomorrow. If not, then on Monday, 10 a.m., Lord willing, we'll be back here in studio for more Mojo, and hope you will tune in at that time. Until then, take good care.